Day after day, we are surrounded by the presence of criminals. We are spectators to the deepest darkness in human actions and the bizarre reality that someone's suffering can be a form of pleasure. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Luke, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The case of Natalia Melman. In the heart of Buenos Aires, Argentina, a vibrant soul named Natalia Melman came into the world on the 13th of March in the year 1986. She was the third child in a family of four, comprising 2 boys and 2 girls, born to the loving couple of Gustavo and Laura. Theirs was a comfortable middle-class household, sustained by the hard work of her parents. When young Natalia was just 6 years old, her parents made a life-altering decision. They decided to uproot their family and seek a new beginning in Miramar, affectionately known as the City of Children. The Melman family longed for a serene environment that would connect them with nature, shield them from the hustle and pollution of bustling cities, and enable them to build a harmonious life together. Their journey led them to Miramar on the 7th of November in 1992. Nestled on the Atlantic Ocean coast, Miramar enchanted with its picturesque landscapes and captivating beaches. Its population hovered around 35,000 residents, and the city's economy thrived during the vibrant summer tourist season. Agriculture and agro-industry played significant roles. As the year 2001 dawned, Natalia found herself immersed in her studies at high school. She was a brilliant student, consistently achieving top-notch grades. However, her commitment to academics did not hinder her sociability. Among her peers, she was celebrated for her infectious cheerfulness and outgoing nature. Such qualities led to her being chosen as the class representative, a testament to her popularity. Yet, like any typical young person, Natalia cherished her moments of leisure. She frequently embarked on adventures to various dance venues, where the rhythm of life blended with her youthful spirit. In the vibrant nightlife of Argentina, these venues are commonly referred to as boliches, and they often attract a young, enthusiastic crowd. Natalia, a bright and determined young woman, had a clear sense of how to balance her pursuit of fun without compromising her aspirations. She was deeply committed to her responsibilities and had her eyes set on a future that held a special place in her heart. A future in medicine, with a particular fascination for obstetrics, where she envisioned herself helping bring new life into the world. Natalia possessed a level of maturity and charisma that made her seem older than her years, endearing her to a wide circle of friends. Despite being in a relationship, she confided in her close friends about lingering feelings for her previous boyfriend, who had also moved on to a new romance. Her mother fondly remembered her as a passionate and loving young woman. On the evening of Saturday, February 3, 2001, just 1 month shy of her 15th birthday, Natalia found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. Weary from overthinking and worrying, she decided to embark on a night out with 2 of her friends, seeking a temporary escape and a chance to clear her mind. Their night led them through several establishments, beginning with La Cantina, a bar situated just a stone's throw away from Miramar's picturesque pier. Later, they ventured to Amadeus, another bustling locale in Miramar, a short distance from their initial stop. As the early hours of Sunday, February 4, approached, Natalia unexpectedly crossed paths with her ex-boyfriend, Juan Maximiliano. She contemplated striking up a conversation, driven by a desire to rekindle their romance, but was disheartened to find him in the company of another girl named Diana. Faced with this disheartening scene, Natalia made the decision to leave the bar and head back home. Dawn was breaking, and Natalia had experienced a tumultuous night, characterized by moments of joy interspersed with spells of sadness. Her emotional state fluctuated from laughter to introspection in the blink of an eye. At around 7 in the morning on that fateful Sunday, February 4, Natalia bid her friends farewell, unaware of the harrowing ordeal awaiting her. As she walked away from the bar, a sense of vulnerability and solitude accompanied her, the residue of the night's mixed emotions. Unbeknownst to her, a man named Gustavo Fernandez, often referred to as El Gallo, had begun trailing her from a distance. Gustavo was a figure with a troubled history. In those early 2000s, at the age of 30, he carried a past marked by incarceration. In the pre-dawn hours of February 4, he had been present at one of the entertainment venues Natalia and her friends had visited. During this pivotal moment, a sinister plot had been set in motion. Gustavo, while enjoying himself at the bar, was approached by 3 officers from the Buenos Aires Province Police. These officers joined Gustavo, and together they concocted a disturbing plan. While Natalia had ventured several streets away from the bar, lost in her thoughts and weary from a night of dancing, an unexpected police patrol pulled up beside her. Gustavo, who had been surreptitiously tailing her, launched a shocking assault. A violent struggle ensued as he forcefully attempted to coerce Natalia into the patrol vehicle. Initially, he resorted to physical aggression, striking and pushing her. Despite her brave resistance, Natalia was overpowered by the sheer strength of her assailant. In a harried and alarming manner, Gustavo succeeded in placing her inside the trunk of the vehicle. Remarkably, Gustavo then continued to walk away nonchalantly, as if nothing untoward had occurred. Meanwhile, the 3 police officers sped off with Natalia towards the outskirts of the city. Their destination was a rustic cabin in an area devoid of basic amenities like water and electricity. It was a remote and desolate location chosen as part of their sinister plan. Back at the Melman family's home, the arrival of the morning on Sunday, February 4, initially seemed like any other day but swiftly transformed into a day of anguish. Laura, Natalia's mother, sensed that something was amiss when her daughter failed to return home for the night. Natalia had always been diligent about communicating her plans and whereabouts, making her absence deeply unsettling. Laura contacted Gustavo, Natalia's father, and together they embarked on a mission to visit Natalia's friends' homes to gather information. Filled with a lot of doubts and growing concern, they engaged in conversations with Natalia's friends. It was during these conversations that they pieced together the events of the previous night, including Natalia's movements before leaving the bar. Upon learning about the places Natalia had visited and the events leading up to her departure from the bar, Laura and Gustavo initiated a search. They checked local hospitals, beaches, and various locations throughout Miramar, desperately searching for any sign of their daughter. However, their efforts yielded no results, and as night descended, they were left utterly distraught and without any clues regarding Natalia's whereabouts. In their mounting despair, Natalia's parents made the heart-wrenching decision to report her as missing. When they reached out to the authorities, the officers they encountered classified the incident as a case of a runaway from home rather than a disappearance. This unusual turn of events marked the beginning of a series of suspicions and irregularities that would soon unfold. Gustavo and Laura couldn't bear to think in the worst possibilities, but the unnerving silence from Natalia confirmed that she was being prevented from reaching out to them. Natalia's disappearance was far from a voluntary act on her part. The initial response from the police raised eyebrows due to their apparent lack of urgency in the case. By February 5th, local media outlets had started featuring Natalia's face, and soon, national media joined the coverage, all reporting on the young girl's disappearance. As Natalia's family and friends tirelessly sought answers, witnesses gradually emerged, confirming they had seen Natalia leaving the bar, with Gustavo following her as she moved away. Simultaneously, in a show of support for the family and concern for Natalia's welfare, the Miramar municipality provided Laura and Gustavo with an office space. At that point, they lacked even a telephone to gather information about their daughter. This space became a hub for people to share leads and provide crucial details regarding the case. Laura and Gustavo were determined to uncover the truth surrounding their daughter's disappearance. The office's glass front was covered with posters bearing Natalia's face, serving a dual purpose: to keep their daughter's image at the forefront of everyone's minds and to ensure the confidentiality of those coming forward with information. In the days following Natalia's disappearance, extensive search efforts spanned various areas of Miramar and even extended to Mar del Sur, a locality approximately 20 kilometers away, based on reports of Natalia being seen in the area. The police conducted various operations, interviewed potential witnesses, and established traffic checkpoints, but regrettably, these efforts bore no fruit. Simultaneously, rumors began to circulate, suggesting possible police involvement in Natalia's disappearance. The police investigations extended to another coastal area in the Buenos Aires province, as suspicions grew around certain police officers' roles in the case. Gustavo, initially a witness, gradually faded from his usual places of visit, eventually disappearing entirely. This development frustrated the Miramar community and deeply distressed Natalia's parents. They felt betrayed and couldn't comprehend how the prime suspect in their daughter's disappearance had managed to escape scrutiny. Days turned into weeks, and the official authorities remained tight-lipped, prompting the community to express their dissatisfaction. A series of protests erupted, demanding answers regarding Natalia's case. These demonstrations, attended by both locals and thousands of tourists, consistently called for Natalia's safe return, with around 8,000 people marching each night, vowing to stay on the streets until she was found. On February 8, 2001, a young woman was exploring the iconic sand dunes area of Miramar. While traversing the terrain, she made a grim discovery: the lifeless body of a girl, just 800 meters from where police had been conducting search operations. The girl's remains were in an advanced state of decomposition and partially covered by clothing. Visible signs of abuse and indications of forced intimacy were evident. A cord was found around her neck, suggesting strangulation. While it was presumed to be Natalia, local forensic authorities had to confirm her identity. Gustavo, Natalia's father, had been away, seeking tracking dogs to aid in the search for his daughter. He learned of the discovery through television news, and the shock and grief were nearly unbearable. Meanwhile, a local resident reported his attempts to search the area near the discovery but was thwarted by the police. His suspicions of police misconduct deepened when he realized that the body had been found near the location where officers had barred his return to the area. The discovery of Natalia's body ignited public fury in Miramar, exacerbated by suspicions of police involvement. This anger escalated into violence, resulting in significant damage to the police station. The case's prominence compelled government authorities, including Minister of Security and the President of Argentina, to remove the initial lead investigator in Natalia's case from his duties. As more details emerged, it was revealed that Natalia's body had been found lying face up, bearing signs of severe brutality, including burns on various body parts and evidence of forced encounters with multiple individuals. Forensic analysis revealed genetic material from 5 different men, and her resistance was evident beneath her fingernails, indicating a fierce struggle. Authorities confirmed that Natalia had been held captive for several hours and that her pleas for release had been ignored. Following her death, it was presumed that her body had been kept in the same house where the events occurred for 4 days before being transported to the dunes, where it was ultimately discovered. Given the irregular conditions of the case and the alleged police cover-up reported by the family, it wasn't until September 2002 that the trial took place. 3 out of the 5 murder suspects, the police officers Ricardo Suarez, Oscar Echenique, and Ricardo Anselmini, were brought to trial, along with a 4th individual, Gustavo Fernandez, who was identified as the one responsible for handing Natalia over. In mid-October of the same year, The Second Criminal Oral Court of Mar del Plata established the guilt of the three individuals through skin, saliva, and pubic hair samples. Additionally, traces of soil found on Natalia's shoe were deemed consistent with the soil from the remote house, serving as evidence in the trial. The court sentenced the police officers Oscar Echenique, Ricardo Anselmini, and Ricardo Suarez to life imprisonment with additional penalties, considering them co-authors of the crimes of aggravated illegal deprivation of liberty, aggravated sexual abuse, and triple qualified homicide with cruelty, treachery, and in collusion with two or more persons. Gustavo El Gallo Fernandez was also sentenced to 25 years in prison. There was a law in effect during the time of Natalia's kidnapping and murder that led to further reductions in the sentences of those responsible for the teenager's homicide. They once again sought the benefits of temporary releases, and remarkably, their requests were granted once more, every 15 days, twice a month, and for 12 hours each time. Ricardo, and Oscar could leave prison and return to their homes. During one of these instances when he was free, Ricardo unexpectedly encountered Laura in a supermarket. Overwhelmed by anger, she shouted at him repeatedly, labeling him a murderer, but he simply responded with a smile. This incident shed light on the fact that the oversight of the measure granted to the former police officers was inadequate. The permission was intended for them to go to their residences, not to freely roam the city as if they had no pending legal matters. These glaring irregularities provided a strong argument for revoking their benefits. However, due to the difficulty in placing trust in the local courts, Gustavo, Natalia's father, resorted to a hunger strike in front of the Palace of Justice in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. This act of protest yielded results. In a case marred by irregularities, Gustavo managed to have his sentence reduced to 10 years. He was released in 2009, even though he was accused of another murder in Miramar. In June 2018, the trial of Ricardo, an active duty police officer with over 20 years of service, commenced. This officer had been under investigation since 2002, as he had been partially identified from the DNA samples taken during the investigations. However, he was later acquitted. He faced charges as a co-perpetrator of deprivation of liberty and legitimate freedom, along with the use of violence, aggravated sexual abuse with penetration, in collaboration with two or more individuals, and double aggravated homicide, committed to ensure the impunity of the co-perpetrators of a previous crime. He declared his innocence, despite the fact that the pubic hair found on Natalia's body matched his DNA by 97%. Tragically, not only was he acquitted, but he was also not expelled from the police force. The judges concluded that the accusation could not be substantiated. However, the verdict faced appeals from the prosecution and Natalia's family's legal representative. On November 13, 2019, the Buenos Aires Court of Appeals nullified that acquittal and ordered a new trial. In the meantime, the criminal defense attorney of two former police officers who were incarcerated declared to the media in early 2023. She asserted that her clients, Oscar and Ricardo Alfredo, meet the eligibility criteria for parole. During a hearing at the Mar del Plata Court of Appeals, she formally requested their early release. She also emphasized that the prison service reports have been favorable, highlighting that her clients have maintained impeccable behavior, with no records of infractions throughout their incarceration. From her perspective, they have already served the requisite time as mandated by the law. Once again, the parents of Natalia, ever watchful, attended the hearing and voiced their plea against the early release of the two former police officers convicted for their daughter's tragic fate. Fast forward to mid-May 2023, Ricardo, one of the police officers, aged 65, received a life sentence for his involvement in the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of Natalia Melman. Following the court's verdict, Laura expressed that the quest for justice continues, awaiting the identification and prosecution of the fifth individual involved. She made it resoundingly clear that her maternal determination knows no bounds and that the fight for justice will persist until all those responsible for Natalia's untimely demise are held accountable. The Natalia Melman case underscores the paramount importance of a trustworthy and impartial justice system where individuals responsible for criminal acts, regardless of their background, face the legal consequences commensurate with their actions. The unwavering dedication of Natalia's parents played a pivotal role in ensuring that justice ultimately prevailed, preventing corruption and a lack of transparency within certain law enforcement circles from obstructing the pursuit of truth and accountability. Natalia's mother has reiterated again and again, "Our battles do not waver. While we cannot bring our daughter back to life, we must relentlessly pursue the fifth individual involved. It is through collective strength that we continue our pursuit of justice." And that's the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this. Every day we coexist with evil. We witness the darkest side of human behavior. The suffering caused by one individual to others is something inherent in our society. As dedicated investigators of the criminal world, we're on a mission to uncover the most shocking crimes and get inside the minds of those who commit them. I am Lucas, and today I bring you another unreal true crime. The West Memphis 3 case. On May 5, 1993, the weather was perfect in the small town of West Memphis, located in Crittenden County, United States. The 3 8-year-old friends were getting ready at their homes to go out and play. The boys had met at Weaver Elementary School, and what brought them together was the local scout group, where all 3 had reached the rank of novice scouts. First, there was Stevie Edward Branch, born on November 26, 1984, the son of Stephen and Pamela Branch. His parents had divorced when he was young, and later his mother married Terry Hobbs. Years later, the family expanded with the birth of his younger sister. Stevie was about 4 feet 2 inches tall, weighed around 64 pounds, and had dark blonde hair. He was an honor student with a promising future, but at that moment, he was just a child. That day, he put on a white shirt and blue jeans, left his house on his black and red bicycle. Second was Christopher Byers, born on June 23, 1984, to parents Melissa DeFeer and Rick Moore. His parents divorced when he was just 4 years old, and shortly after, his mother married John Mark Byers, who adopted him, along with his 13-year-old brother, creating a new family. Christopher was the smallest of the group, standing at about 4 feet, weighing around 51 pounds, and had light brown hair. His physique matched his personality. He was very sweet and innocent. He wore blue pants, dark shoes, a white long-sleeve shirt, and headed to his destination. The group was completed with Michael James Moore, born on July 27, 1984, to parents Todd and Dana Moore, and he had an older sister. Michael was the leader and stood out for his strong personality. He was about 4 feet 2 inches tall, weighed around 77 pounds, and had brown hair. Before leaving, he put on blue pants, a Boy Scout shirt, and a cap from the same organization. He liked wearing the uniform even when he wasn't at scout meetings. He was a real enthusiast. He rode on his green bicycle to meet Christopher and Stevie. The 3 boys headed toward the Robin Hood Hills, where they played all afternoon. Around 6:30 p.m., Christopher's stepfather started calling them to come home, but he only heard the echo of his own voice in response. After half an hour of waiting and growing anxious, Mark Byers decided to go to the police station to report the 3 boys missing. Although the authorities began a search, it had to be limited because it was already very dark, and the trees covered the entire area. Nevertheless, families and neighbors carried out their own search until dawn, but they could not find any trace of the 3 children. At the break of dawn the next day, the police started a more comprehensive investigation, led by the search and rescue personnel of Crittenden County. They searched every corner of the forest, but they could not find even a single clue. Around 1:45 in the afternoon, just when they thought all hope was lost, they reached the Robin Hood Hills, the wooded area where the boys had last been seen. Officer Steve Jones spotted a black shoe floating in a creek, leading to the largest drainage channel in the hills. He alerted his supervisors, and they acted quickly, searching the area downstream of the ditch. There, they encountered the most shocking sight of their lives. The lifeless bodies of the 3 children were at the bottom of a lake, having been tied hand and foot with their own shoelaces. Their right ankles were tied to their right wrists behind their backs, and the same was done with their left legs and arms. The horror did not end there. Both Michael and Steve had bruises all over their bodies. Christopher, on the other hand, had bruises and abrasions on various parts of his body, as well as cuts on his private parts and bite marks. However, this was not of particular attention to the detectives. No one could understand the magnitude of the crime. It had been perpetrated with a cruelty that transcended human limits. At the bottom of the same muddy ditch, wrapped around sticks, they found the children's clothing. Most of the garments were inside out, as if they had been hastily removed. Something that particularly caught the detectives' attention was that the underwear of 2 of the children was nowhere to be found, and 1 pair of pants had traces of fluid, leading to speculation about a possible motive of sexual assault. However, before drawing any conclusions, they had to wait for the forensic analysis. The case was just beginning. The investigation process was hindered because the officers had removed the bodies from where they were found before the forensic scientists arrived to conduct the pertinent studies. The crime scene was contaminated, as the chief of police was continuously smoking, throwing cigarette butts into the ditch. The autopsies indicated that Christopher died from multiple wounds that caused him to bleed out, while Stevie and Michael died from drowning in the ditch. The autopsies indicated that Christopher died from multiple wounds that caused him to bleed out, while Stevie and Michael died from drowning in the ditch. The hypothesis of sexual abuse was discarded because the studies showed that the wounds were the result of a knife attack, and there were no signs of sexual abuse on the bodies of the minors. Speculation began about the possibility that the children had been attacked somewhere near the woods and then murdered in the ditch. Christopher's autopsy stood out from the rest. He was the only victim with drugs present in his system, specifically Ritalin. While the boy took the medication daily due to his attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the dose found in him corresponded to a level higher than that indicated by his therapist. The details emerging from the case were increasingly disturbing, and the townspeople grew more and more anxious, exerting pressure on the police. They were desperate for a quick resolution and a culprit to blame. Suddenly, it seemed as if a light had been shown on a potential suspect, a teenager who seemed to fit the criminal profile. His name was Damien Eccles. He was 18 years old and had a substantial record of minor offenses, such as vandalism and theft. He had dropped out of high school and had been institutionalized due to mental health issues. The police, who had been speculating for some time, saw him as the perfect scapegoat. Eccles was always attracting too much attention with his heavy metal band fandom, his interest in pagan religion, his dark clothing, and his black hair, making the townspeople feel scandalized whenever they saw him. His family, being from a lower social class and having had interactions with social services on several occasions, was also known to the police. On May 7, 1993, Eccles was interrogated for the first time. He denied knowing the 3 murdered children or having anything to do with the case. He even agreed to a polygraph test, which suggested that he was innocent. However, prejudices persisted, and there was no concrete evidence against him. Despite this, the media and the entire town had already deemed him guilty. Public opinion alone was not enough to close the case. The manager of Bojangles, a local restaurant, contacted the police for the second time that week. After seeing the case on television, he believed there might be a connection to an incident that had occurred at his restaurant on May 5th, near where the bodies were discovered. At 8:40 p.m. on the day of the children's disappearance, he had called the West Memphis Police Department to report a strange incident. A man with brown hair had entered the restaurant, covered in blood, with muddy feet, a bruised arm, and appearing disoriented. He had then gone into the women's bathroom. A few minutes later, the man left the restaurant, and the employees discovered blood smeared on the walls of the bathroom. Officer Regina Meek responded to the call, speaking to the manager through a drive-through window. She didn't seem particularly concerned about the information and left without checking the bathroom. After the manager's second call, Detective Bryn Ridge and Sergeant Mike Allen returned to the restaurant, this time with a more proactive approach. They collected scrapings of the blood from the bathroom wall, but did not bother to question the other employees about the incident. The scrapings were never sent to a crime lab for analysis and were later declared lost. The lead was dismissed because the prosecutor argued that it was completely absurd to think that the person who committed the murders and took great care to hide the bodies, clothes, and bikes of the children would enter a public place covered in blood. Moreover, the injuries would have made it very difficult for one person to have killed all three boys alone. The police were desperate for someone to bear witness to the crime that they believed Eccles had committed. They interrogated Jesse Miskelly Jr., a 16-year-old with a mental disability, for 12 hours without the presence of his parents or an attorney. After numerous twists and turns, Miskelly implicated himself, Eccles, and Jason Baldwin in the crime, despite not having any connection to Eccles. However, his statement was inconsistent with the forensic evidence, as he described the boys being tied up with an industrial rope, whereas they were actually bound with their own shoelaces. Within a few hours, Miskelly retracted his statement, even providing an alibi that he was in another town watching a wrestling match on the night of the murders. But it was too late. The police had what they needed: 3 perfect suspects, capable of creating 3 distinct knots to subdue the victims, just as the crime scene suggested. The media frenzy that ensued portrayed the 3 suspects as guilty, further fueled by the satanic panic phenomenon sweeping across the United States at the time, where heinous crimes were often associated with devil worship and the resurgence of cults. The West Memphis authorities crafted a strong narrative against the 3 young men, labeling them as outcasts who had committed the murders as part of a satanic ritual. When Eccles' home was searched, a book with a pentagram on the cover was found. The police saw this as sufficient evidence to claim that the 3 teenagers were involved in a black magic cult, shaping the narrative they wanted to impose on the public consciousness. People began to come forward claiming they had seen Eccles near the crime scene. Detectives managed to interview 2 girls aged 12 and 15 who claimed they had heard Damien confess to the murders. An anonymous statement claimed to have seen Eccles covered in mud on the night the children disappeared. However, the real lead was provided by a woman named Vicki Hutchison. She said her son Aaron, who sometimes played with the 3 young victims, had seen strange things in the woods. Nonetheless, her statement was dismissed due to its lack of solidity. Vicki didn't give up and provided a second statement in which she claimed to have seen the teenagers performing a ritual, which later turned into debauchery, on the same night that the victims disappeared. She alleged that the teenagers had abused the boys. However, there was no evidence of this on any of the bodies, and her testimony was extremely odd. Vicki committed to gathering more evidence and invited Damien to her home for a conversation. She hid a microphone and recorded every second of their talk. However, the young man didn't say anything that could be used against him. Frustrated by the lack of evidence, the police stated that the tape was inaudible, but didn't prove Eccles' innocence under any circumstances. Both he and Jason were arrested on June 3 of that same year. Jesse Miskelly Jr. was tried separately from the other 2 accused, providing several statements that did not match the facts narrated by the prosecution. The trial was heated, and an expert on false confessions stated that the young man had suffered from police coercion. They had taken advantage of his mental condition to tell him a version of the crime, and he ended up believing it. However, none of this was taken into account when delivering the sentence. On February 5, 1994, Miss Kelly was convicted of 1 count of first-degree murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. Although he avoided the death penalty, the judge sentenced him to life imprisonment plus 40 years. The trial of Eccles and Baldwin was as scandalous as their companions. Evidence used included Stephen King books, black metal band flags, and song lyrics written on the walls of the accused rooms. The verdict was emphatic. The young men were part of a satanic cult and had murdered the children to carry out a ritual. Fibers and a knife found by divers in a lake behind Baldwin's house were also presented as evidence. However, it couldn't be proven that any of these items belonged to the accused youths. It was circumstantial evidence, and they were not given the right to appeal. Much of the evidence that the defense attorneys hoped to present was excluded by the judge. Eccles was sentenced to death by lethal injection for being the mastermind of the crimes, while Baldwin was sentenced to life imprisonment. When asked if there was any reason why the sentence should not be pronounced, Baldwin reaffirmed his innocence. Eccles, completely devastated, shook his head. The execution date was scheduled for May 5, 1994, but nothing was that simple. For the victims' families, the sentence had been handed down too quickly, and there were unresolved issues, which began the most mediatic part of the case, attracting the attention of the most unexpected figures. The young men were already known throughout the country as the West Memphis Three. The case aroused the interest of several prominent figures in the music world, whom Eccles and Baldwin listened to. Among them was Pearl Jam's lead singer, Eddie Vedder, who helped raise money for their legal defense. Natalia Melman, the lead singer of the Dixie Chicks, also joined the cause of the trio. The metal band Corrosion of Conformity included a song inspired by the case called Free the Three in their album Wise Blood. But it wasn't just musicians who were part of the media defense. The young men also received support from Johnny Depp and several film directors. In 2007, with significantly more advanced technology, new DNA tests were conducted. These tests showed that there was no trace of the 3 accused on the bodies of the children. The bite marks also did not match any of them. Most shockingly, the results suggested the presence of other individuals at the crime scene. A hair found on one of the shoelaces of Michael Moore was consistent with the DNA of Terry Hobbs, Stevie Branch's stepfather. Hobbs had a criminal record and was known in the town for having a long history of mistreatment, including assaulting his wife, allegations of hitting minors, and attacks on neighbors. Another hair found near the crime scene on a tree stump was consistent with the DNA of a friend of Hobbs, named David Jacoby. Both claimed to have been together on the night of the murders. Hobbs emphasized that he believed the guilty parties were already behind bars. However, 3 witnesses presented sworn statements claiming they saw Hobbs with the children on the night they disappeared. The police did not initiate legal actions against him, but the media did. Peter Jackson, the renowned director, began producing a documentary with the goal of reconstructing the events, pointing at Stevie's stepfather as the murderer. New testimonies were collected. Jo Lynn McCaughey, Michael Moore's mother, claimed she saw Hobbs washing clothes on the night of the murders, presumably to clean mud off his clothes. Additionally, a cherished pocket knife belonging to Stevie, which he almost always carried with him, was later found among Hobbs' possessions. Finally, and perhaps most damningly, 3 young men claimed that a nephew of Hobbs told them his uncle had been the murderer, but it was a family secret. Opinions among the victims' families began to diverge. The stepfather of Christopher Byers started to suspect Hobbs, even calling him a child murderer. However, Todd Moore believed that the evidence against Hobbs was not convincing. He pointed out that his son spent a lot of time at Stevie's house and could have easily picked up a hair with DNA on his shoelaces on one of those occasions. The tipping point came with the reappearance of Vicki Hutchison, who admitted that she had agreed to collaborate with the police in exchange for a $30,000 reward. She was supposed to provide false information to implicate Eccles. This revelation indicated it was time to redeem the West Memphis Three. In 2010, 17 years after the crime, the Arkansas Supreme Court ordered that the DNA evidence must lead to a new trial. The West Memphis Three reached an agreement with the prosecution, adhering to the Alford plea, which allowed them to assert their innocence, while acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict them. On August 19, 2011, they were released on a suspended sentence of 10 years, after having spent 18 years in prison. However, they remain on probation and could be incarcerated again for more than 21 years if they reoffend. The procedure allowed the accused to freely express that they are innocent, even though their official record still lists them as guilty. In interviews given after their release, Baldwin stated that he had been reluctant to plead guilty to crimes he did not commit, but he did so to spare Echols from the death penalty. Although the families of two of the victims came to believe that the trio was innocent, a spectator shouted "murderers" at the three as they left the courthouse. It would be very difficult to undo the scandal that the West Memphis police had constructed. In a press conference, the three, now adults, stated that their main concern was clearing their names. In 2013, a new version of the story emerged from Billy Wayne Stewart, a self-confessed drug dealer, and Benny Guy, a convicted felon. The story was not firsthand, but had reached them through Buddy Lucas, a teenager from the town. On May 5, 1993, Buddy had gone out with Terry Hobbs, David Jacoby, and his friend John Mark Byers to buy marijuana from Stewart. They then got into Hobbs' truck and drove around the city, smoking and drinking whiskey. They reached a wooded area, and at that moment, Hobbs asked the two teenagers to get out and fight while he and Jacoby watched in a fetishistic act. It was unclear whether this led to any intimate activity. During the course of that afternoon, Christopher Byers, Michael Moore, and Stevie Branch appeared on their bicycles. Upon realizing they were witnessing something they shouldn't, they decided to leave, but it was too late. Hobbs shouted at his companions to stop the boys, while Jacoby hit one of them. That's when the attack occurred, resulting in the mutilation of Christopher's genitals. The other boys had seen too much, so they decided to kill them all. The clothing and bodies of the boys were collected and dragged to the water, and their bicycles were thrown into the swamp. According to Stewart, when he tried to call the West Memphis police investigator to tell him Buddy Lucas' story, he didn't even bother to return the calls. These statements are public knowledge, but the case remains closed. It is unclear if the authorities prefer to leave the case as a collective myth rather than seeking true justice for the victims and their families. And well, that brings us to the end of today's case. As always, I appreciate your support for my work. If you subscribe, like, and share this video, it will help me continue creating content. This was another Unreal True Crime. See you soon.